Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Friday, January 22nd, 2021. Thank you so much for joining me. We're just doing another weekly wrap-up because it was a busy week. It was a very eventful week. President Trump leaving office and the transition to the Biden administration, the inauguration which took place this Wednesday. And thank goodness it was rather peaceful, which is how it's supposed to be, even though there was still the imagery of 9-foot-high fences, barbed-wired fences, 25 to 30,000 National Guardsmen and federal agents around the Capitol. That is not the image we want to portray in the United States of America. We need to be the beacon. We need to be the example for other countries. That's how it's supposed to be. So that's a disgrace. That's an embarrassment, and that's going to be a stain that is permanent on our record here in the United States of America. The call for unity by President Biden is, of course, the right message, but we cannot be naive into believing that just because somebody is calling for unity, that that's actually going to take place. I would love for that to happen, but it most likely is not going to happen, at least not anytime soon. This country, our government, remains very highly divided along party lines, which is just another piece of evidence and another reason to leave the two-party system, because we are destroying ourselves from within. We are destroying our government. We are destroying our country. You know, some of our founding fathers warned us. George Washington told us, do not split off, do not splinter off into parties. This is what happens. This is human nature. This is like human psychology. We are very tribal. People are competitive. Nobody wants to be a loser. You want to be a winner. So if you put yourself in a team, because we're social beings, we're social creatures, we're going to be attracted by other people and to other people that share similar likes and philosophies. Say, oh, well, we'll become Democrats. Oh, we'll become Republicans. And we just want to win. There is no compromise. There's no room for compromise. You're in a group. Now that's it. And that's how the other side looks at the other side. If you're in that group, the other side's going to simply presume everything about you just because you're in that group. And that leaves no room whatsoever for civil conversation, civil debate. That, unfortunately, is becoming the rare option, the rare action for people in this country to get together with opposing views, have a civil discussion, and come to some type of agreement to move forward. Can't even do it. Our social media is breaking down along party lines. And I would submit to the audience that because everything has become so political, that this is just another box that is getting checked that serves as further proof, further evidence that this country is in decline. Because everything shouldn't be about politics. We can talk about Twitter and other big tech firms censoring individuals, shutting down other platforms because they're not letting them online, such as Parler. I don't agree with a lot of the censorship. I don't think it was the right move by Twitter to censor Donald Trump, but I understand why they did it. And at the end of the day, it's a private company. It is their platform. They can do it. They have the right to do it. They have the authority to do it. The First Amendment of the Constitution does not read, Twitter shall make no law. It's that the government shall make no law infringing upon these rights. They're a private company. You don't like it, don't use it. You really don't like it, start your own platform. That's how it's supposed to work. The president wants to reach the American people. Well, we have had many more presidents that did not have Twitter and were still able to reach out to the people than presidents who really use that as their primary platform. If Donald Trump wants to get out to the American people, he can do a press conference and all cameras will be on him. He could have issued press statements and it would have been circulated. I understand that he likes Twitter and other platforms. It's very quick to reach a large audience, people who support him and don't like him, but nonetheless, it's a large audience. But there are other means to do it. And from a libertarian standpoint, and this is where a lot of people get confused or maybe frustrated with the Libertarian Party or with that libertarian ideology of freedom. People can't grasp this. They can't understand this concept because they've been programmed and brainwashed by the mainstream media, by talk radio, by the DNC, by the GOP to just think that there's only one or two solutions and that's it. But when I say that Twitter has the right to do it, doesn't mean that I like it. But they have the right, and you have to endorse and protect their right to take these actions. Another example, obviously that controversy a handful of years ago that is being circulated back through every once in a while, is that bakery that refused to bake a cake for that gay couple, their wedding. Well, it's the same principle. You may not like the decision that they made, but it's their property, it's their business. They've made the decision they don't want to bake the cake. I come down and I support that. It's their business. Now, if that is an action undertaken by that business, by the bakery, and I say, you know what, I don't like that they did that, then I can say, I'm not going to buy a cake from them. I'm not going to buy brownies from them. I'm not going to buy cookies from them. I can take that action. But that doesn't mean that should I come down and say, I don't like this, that there has to be a local, state, or federal law that forces them to bake a cake. That's where it goes off the rails. Just because I support something doesn't mean that I am endorsing it. Another thing where libertarians get picked on a lot is with respect to drugs and the legalization or the decriminalization thereof. Well, it's your body, it's your choice. There's a lot of things that people do to themselves that aren't too smart. A lot of people can classify alcohol as a drug. A lot of people could classify cigarettes as a drug or extremely problematic to one's health. Yet those things are legal. So you just go down the chain of marijuana, cocaine, and some other drugs. Now, I'm not endorsing the usage of those bigger drugs, those harder drugs, but it's your body, it's your choice. Look how many billions of dollars we spend on police forces, on the criminal justice system altogether, the ATF, the FBI, the DEA, and anybody else, the Border Patrol, everything when it comes to drugs. Again, the prison system, our healthcare system that has to deal with this too, and the crime, everything. Billions and billions and billions of dollars. The war on drugs, right? Who's winning? Surely not the government on this one. So when's it going to end? So again, just principally speaking, just philosophically speaking about this, an endorsement of something is different than the support of something. But people can't seem to make that connection. Now, I've had a lot of conversations with people on these types of discussions, on these types of topics. And fortunately, at least from my standpoint, the outliers are those who can never come to this philosophy, or they can never come and they can never make sense of it. Those are the outliers. But you keep having conversations with most people, they will eventually see it. That's what freedom is all about. You may not like what I do, then don't do it. I might not like what you do, so I don't have to do that. But just because you don't like what I'm doing doesn't give you the right to attempt to pass a law or to have others through government pass a law preventing me from doing what I am doing, so long as I'm not hurting anybody. That's what it's all about. And that's why this country is at each other's throats. Because each side, Republican and Democrat, thinks the other side is preventing them from doing exactly what they want to do, however they want to live their life. And until this rationale of understanding what freedom actually means, we're going to continue to see this type of division. Thank goodness the Libertarian Party is the fastest growing party in the country. Perhaps people are starting to wake up. Perhaps people are starting to take my advice and leave the two-party system and to change their voter registration to libertarian or independent or unaffiliated. This in and of itself is a part of a larger peaceful revolution, and it doesn't get any more peaceful than that. And it doesn't get any easier than that. You can do that from home. You don't have to march. You don't have to make signs. You don't have to make phone calls. You do it from home. But it sends a message because these people, these politicians, they pay attention to voter registration because they look at it as a barometer as to, is there growth within the party? Or where's, how are the political winds blowing? Are they coming our way or are they going the other side? Leave them both. They don't care about you. It's perfectly evident. And another piece of this hypocrisy is, of course, with these executive orders that we have been seeing this week alone after President Biden was sworn into office. These are the first items on the docket that he was dealing with immediately. Now, executive orders in and of themselves are not problematic. Executive orders are not a four-letter word, if you will. The President of the United States is in charge of the executive branch. He is the executive. And in fact, he is the executive branch of government. That's why he is the most powerful person in our government, and by extension, on the planet. There are legitimate uses for executive orders. Ordering a Secretary of State or a department to conduct business in a certain manner. To move troops around. Those things can be done through executive orders. The problem comes when executive orders enter the land of legislation. Now, this has been a problem in this country for many, many years. It's been a bigger problem over the past few administrations. And this, too, is a symptom of the division and divisiveness that exists within our country and within our government. Because it is the job of the legislative branch, Congress, to pass laws. But what has been happening is that Congress can't get together and compromise. Not that it's actually going to be good with what they've been doing, but constitutionally speaking, that's how our government is supposed to operate. So there's failure across the board here. It doesn't matter what party, doesn't matter the administration, right? Because if certain bills don't get passed, that's a failure of that administration and their legislative team within the White House to work with Congress to get things passed. That's a failure of the majority party to convince the minority party to come on board or to compromise. And it's a failure of the minority party to come up with a better solution or to come across the aisle and meet halfway somewhere. And so with all of this division, this is becoming very frustrating to the people of the country, to Congress, and to the president himself who wants to get something done, whether that's George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump. So they say, screw it. These people in Congress can't get together to pass a law. Well, something needs to be done here, in their opinion. And so they get out the pen and they sign an executive order. And of course, the hypocrisy and the politics of it all is if Barack Obama signs an executive order, Democrats and the left-wing media couldn't care less. Well, the man had to do something. And of course, the right-wing talk radio is going to go ballistic when Barack Obama signs an executive order, and that's exactly what happened. Then you go to the Trump administration. When he signs executive orders, the Republican Party couldn't care less. Fox News talk radio, happy as a fly on you-know-what. Couldn't care less. And then, of course, the Democrats and the left-wing media go ballistic. You're a ping pong. You're the monkey in the middle. I don't know. Again, it's right in your face. How you can support these people is beyond me. But this is where we are. And now we have Joe Biden as the president, and he's already signed a few dozen executive orders, just being in office for a few short days, undoing a lot of what Donald Trump signed via executive order. Because what comes into existence via executive order can be undone by executive order. That's part of the problem. And Congress over the years has just been abdicating their power, more and more of it, to the executive branch, which is exactly what is not supposed to happen. We are supposed to be a system of checks and balances. Well, if one piece of that, if one branch of our government continues to relinquish power and authority and give it to another branch of government, in this case the executive, well, you're just asking for a lot of trouble. You're asking for a mini dictator. And that is the antithesis of what this country was founded upon. And that, too, in and of itself, causes more division. Because Barack Obama, to a lot of Republicans, was acting like a dictator. Donald Trump, to a lot of Democrats, was acting like a dictator. You see how simple this is to connect these dots, to paint the picture and find ourselves in the situation in which we are? Because we don't understand freedom. Our government should not be anywhere near the size that it is. It should not be anywhere near as powerful as it is. But it's going to continue to grow in size. It's going to continue to accumulate more power until it doesn't, until it completely breaks down. Now, that power should go back to the people where it belongs, but we the people have to understand what freedom is. It's a lot of responsibility. It's our responsibility to handle it, not to pass it off to a bunch of politicians because they don't know how to handle it, which is, again, clearly evident, and causes more division because everybody has an opinion, as they should. That's what this country is about, to have your voice heard. And of course, the system that needs to be adopted in conjunction with our constitutional republic is free market capitalism. You may get to vote for your politicians, your elected quote-unquote leaders, every 2, 4, 6 years. But when it comes to the economic vote, you do that every day. You don't need to wait 2, 4, 6 years. You do that every single day. With your feet and with your wallet. What stores do you walk into? Which ones do you walk out of? Which ones do you make sure you don't even walk across from? And where do you spend your money? And every time you walk into a store and spend money, you're voting for that product. You're voting for that service. Really? You weren't forced to walk into that store. You weren't compelled. You make those decisions. That's how it's supposed to be. These are not difficult concepts. But everybody wants to be a little mini dictator. If I do something, well, then everybody's got to do it, and it has to be the law. That's not how it's supposed to work. From either side. It's supposed to be freedom. You do what you want to do. I'll do what I want to do, and round we go as long as we're not hurting anybody. That should be very simple to grasp. And it led to the creation and the building of the greatest nation on the planet. It led to millions and millions of people around the globe wanting to leave everything they knew behind. Their traditions, their country, their family, their language, everything, for the opportunity to come here. And that's being shattered, that's being destroyed. There are still a lot of opportunities in this country. I'm not completely negative on the entire picture. You understand this. And I do believe our future can be brighter than our present and our past, but not with these policies. They are making it much more difficult than what it needs to be. And people understand this. They might not be able to put their finger on it and do the root cause analysis like we do here at the Capital News, but they feel it. They know something's wrong. When their wages aren't going up, but their utility bill is, and their grocery bill is, and their health care costs are, and et cetera, down the line. They just need to wake up and understand that it's freedom that will solve these problems, not Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris, Not Mike Pence, not Donald Trump. We the people can solve it by adopting and restoring freedom. So, in other political news, we have Joe Biden's cabinet coming together, which, of course, is tradition. He obviously needs his cabinet to operate the government, so most of those figures will be confirmed if they haven't already. Of course, we will have Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen. She will most likely be confirmed with the Senate vote on Monday, so Dingbat will become the first female to hold that position of Treasury Secretary. This is going to be a 1-2 punch with her at the Treasury Department and Jay Powell at the Federal Reserve. Of course, for those of you who are unaware, Janet Yellen used to be the chairman of the Federal Reserve. It's just a big revolving door down there in Washington, D.C. The same jokers that got us into this mess are going to continue to implement policies that keep this mess going on. Okay, so not a good picture at all. We talked yesterday about the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, M1 and M2 money stock, all three hitting all-time highs. This is just the beginning of another beginning. We already basically doubled the size of the Federal Reserve's balance sheet over the past year because they justified it with COVID-19. As I warned last March, in my letter to Congress, my representatives and my senators, representation and recourse, that they will use this to justify the unjustifiable, and we have been proven right every single day since then. And they're going to do even more. They're going to pass another round of quote-unquote stimulus. They will do something with respect to infrastructure, healthcare, the environment. And then we have the impeachment, which looks like that's going to start, I think, the week of February 8th. So at least that's been somewhat delayed. I mean, that's only a couple of weeks away. It'll be here before we know it. But I guess that's enough time for the president to mount a defense, get his team together, what have you. And then, of course, yes, the president has been impeached. President Trump was impeached twice, first president where that's ever happened. And, of course, that happened in a 4-year term. So he is impeached for the second time. Senate, of course, has to hear him in the trial, hear the side, and then convict. It would take a 2/3 majority for that to happen. Are we going to get, I think the number would be 17 Republican senators to cross party lines, if you will, to convict? Most likely not going to happen. It could, depending on the information that's heard in trial. Even that wouldn't make much of a difference, just because everything is so political. Can the Senate walk and chew bubblegum at the same time? I guess we're going to find out. But I do imagine spending is going to go through the roof. Deficits and debts will continue to go through the roof. We know that we're going to virtually accumulate another $22 trillion to our national debt over the next 4 years, according to the U.S. debt clock. And we're only going to grow the economy by looking at GDP by about $3 trillion in that same time period. So it's basically a 7-to-1 ratio. So for every $7 of debt that we add, we're only going to get $1 of growth. Now, does that make sense to anybody out there? No, it doesn't. Does that sound sustainable to anybody? No, because it isn't. From George Washington to Donald J. Trump in 2019, we had a national debt of $22 trillion. In the next 4 years, we're going to add that much to our debt pile to bring it to a whopping $49+ trillion. Completely unsustainable. You are in the midst of the greatest depression, and you are also in the midst of the greatest wealth transfer in history. You thought quantitative easing was bad during the great financial crisis as far as wealth transfers were concerned. We ain't seen nothing yet, because they're going to continue to justify God knows what, because you cannot run these types of deficits into perpetuity. You just cannot do it. Not globally. You might be able to get away with it if one country is doing it like Japan did for the past few decades. It was just them. Now it's everybody. Now everybody's doing it. And we have supply chain disruptions, and there's a ton of uncertainties out there as to what the new normal is going to be once the economy, quote unquote, reopens. And we have a lot of structural issues here. What are they going to do with respect to Medicare and Medicaid spending? What are they going to do with Social Security? Absolutely nothing. They're going to keep it going. What are they going to do with the national security state? Absolutely nothing. They're going to keep it going. It's probably going to grow, become more evasive, more intrusive. continuing to trample upon our constitutional rights. And then, of course, jobless claims, as we discussed yesterday, were unfortunately at 900,000 on a seasonally adjusted basis for the week ending January 16th. That's the second week in a row we had a figure at 900,000 or above. And then when you take a look at the non-seasonally adjusted figure, so basically the raw figure for the week ending January 16th, you're at 960,000. And if you look at the prior week of January 9th, you're at 1.1 million initial claims. I thought things were supposed to be getting better. I thought this was a miraculous V-shaped recovery. I thought throwing several $1 trillion into the economy was going to bring growth back and jobs back. I thought all of these programs, the Nobody Cares Act 1.0, 2.0, was to save jobs. Well, then why are all these people filing for unemployment? Too much common sense. This is just too simple. And none of these questions get asked to anybody. And of course, in the off chance that somebody does have the audacity to ask a question rooted in common sense, it'll still get shot down by Jay Powell at the Federal Reserve or Steven Mnuchin, the former Treasury Secretary. And it'll be the same thing with Janet Yellen. And of course, Jay Powell will continue, and Joe Biden. And it's going to be the same stuff. Same excuses. Oh, well, you want to ask the Federal Reserve this question? Well, we don't have that information. We're going to have to say you have to go to the Treasury Department. They'll give you that answer. Oh, okay. Well, let's go over to the Treasury. Let's ask them the same question. And what's their answer? Oh, we don't have that information. You have to go back to the Federal Reserve. They have that information. This is real. I'm not making this up. This has already happened on multiple occasions. Everybody's passing the buck. That's what this whole scam is. They just want to keep the music playing. They don't want to have the economic and the markets crashing on their watch, even though that's really what needs to happen. That's part of the correction. That's part of the liquidation process. Getting rid of all of the malinvestments. Getting rid of all these zombie corporations, all these companies that are mismanaged. Allowing those corporations, those small businesses who are well run, to gain market share. That's healthy. That will grow the economy. That's what needs to happen. There is no easy way out of this. Any way we go is going to be extremely painful. I would just rather them get this over with sooner rather than later so we can start rebuilding from a solid foundation. But that's not politically convenient for these people. And so you always come to that intersection of political expediency and sound economics. And more times than not, unfortunately, political expediency wins the day, which is why we have our national debt where it is today. As I've stated, we can have compounding interest work in our favor. We can profit over time from compounding interest. But because we choose time and time again political expediency, sacrificing the long term for the sake of the short term, we now have compounding interest working against us. Time and interest is working against us as opposed to for us. Because our debt is growing exponentially larger. Those are expenses. Those could be profits. Those could have been basically dividends due to smart investments. Not just at the government level, I'm just talking from an economic standpoint altogether, from allowing the people, allowing businesses to operate in a free market environment. But that would mean that the government has less control. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be. But that's some of the economic news and some of the political shenanigans of the week, which are, of course, going to continue well into the foreseeable future. But a quick wrap up here with market performance, and I'll let you enjoy your weekend. We have the dollar index trading at 90.21, a little bit up for the day. Not too much movement on the major currency pairs, although the British pound did give back 1/3 of 1%. The Australian dollar did give back about 2/3 of 1%, and the New Zealand dollar gave back about 1/2 of 1% against the US dollar. And recall, those types of movements within the currency market is a sizable move. We have the Dow Jones Industrial Average closing down for the day. It was a mixed bag across Wall Street, but mostly down. However, the Nasdaq was able to eke out another gain. Of course, that will be an all-time closing high, and really a sea of red across all the markets around the globe. The Japanese market did end up closing in the red, as we were discussing last night, down about 0.4%. Sea of red across the pond in European markets, the biggest losers being the Italian markets, giving back 1.2%, and the Spanish markets down another 0.8%, and the Australian market gave back 1/3%. Further weakness across the board in most commodities as well. WTI trading at $51.98 and Brent at $55.08 a barrel. Natural gas continues its decline at $2.44. Gold and silver also had a down day. Gold gave back 0.8%, trading at $1,855 an ounce, and silver gave back 1.8% for the day, still maintaining a 25 handle at $25.48. Spot prices for both. And Uncle Sam's 10-year junk note is yielding 1.09%. So that's where the market's closed for the day. All-time highs or thereabouts, and you have valuations in the 95th to 99th percentile pretty much across the boards, making record highs or nearing all-time record highs. And obviously, if they aren't yet at record highs, your only comparable periods in history are basically the dot-com era. We know how that ended in 1929, right before that crash in the Great Depression. So these are not good historical timelines to be comparing ourselves to. And we have about, I believe, 92% or so of the S&P 500 trading above their 200-day moving average. Getting a little bit technical here with some of the charts for some of you who may not be aware. But nonetheless, all-time high, very close to it. And typically when we hit that number, you see a correction. Well, we've been plateauing here for quite a while. So these markets, in my opinion, are fragile, remain fragile. That's nothing different than what I've been saying here for quite a while. But this is just another piece of evidence that's saying these markets are completely just unhinged from reality and are being propped up by excessive amounts of money printing around the globe, an excessive amount of spending from reckless governments. And as I stated last year, free was never so expensive, because a lot of people think this stuff is just growing on trees, and it's not. And we're all going to be paying the price today and well into the future. But there you have it. Enjoy your weekend. I will most likely be back on Monday, unless there is some sort of breaking news over the weekend, and then I might do an episode over the weekend. But stay safe out there, and I will catch you next week. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.